Well, good to have you in the Sports Editor. Thank you so much for chatting to us about your career and where you're currently based in St. Andrews, Grahamstown. Lovely school, fantastic school. So I'm excited to see what you have to say about the school program, the cricket program, so to say. Cole, first question. You're currently the Director of Cricket at St. Andrews. Would it be fair to say that a good cricket program ensures a good school work ethic?
Yeah, I think cricket by nature, obviously it's a long-term game and it teaches us a lot of things in terms of life. So I think like patience, endurance, obviously perseverance and all the rest. So, and also I understand that, it is a bit of a longer, sport played and is time consuming. But at the same time, with the boys boarding school, boys need to be occupied. So yeah, it is a little bit of a sell in terms of cricket. So you've got to try and have the balance between time cricket and 2020 cricket. But I do believe there's enough sort of gees and enough energy behind cricket. It's not like it's, the guys come to St. Andrews and avoid the game. I think, there are enough players and talent for us to work with. So, yeah, I don't, and it's more about probably promoting an athlete. And I think the guys who play basketball, there's guys who play polo, and there will always be a little bit of competition for space in terms of who plays what sport. But I think, they're only coming in as a grade 8, and some of them haven't even played cricket before. Some haven't been exposed to other sports. So you've got to give them that space to make that decision. I think that if you force it upon them, then they might not ever come back to the game. So that initial part where they're in grade 8 and you promote skills and athlete development and then they go and experience it for themselves, then the ones that want to play cricket will obviously gravitate towards it. Last thing you want to do is give them an unhappy experience because they're not going to be coming back in a rush as such. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I think, it's that healthy balance and, understanding that they're just boys and they're still understanding who they are and where they fit as such, especially as grade 8s. Yeah.
Absolutely. But talking about it, you are in a bit of pressure because I think you got about 450 boys that attend St. Andrews. And obviously in some sports, water polo is doing very well, rowing is doing very well. So, you mentioned there that you got to keep cricket interesting for them. How do you sort of go about that? How do you keep cricket interesting for the learners? Because a lot of them are saying, cricket just takes too long. It's a whole day affair, especially when I'm playing 18. How do you sort of keep that interest going?
I think it takes long for the boys who aren't heavily involved in influencing the game. So you would say, a guy that's, he doesn't feel like he's making an impact. He hasn't got a real belonging in the team.
True.
For the guys that are batting, bowling, fielding, wicket keeping, there's not a hard sell. They'll come back every day.
Yeah.
So it's about creating opportunities for those guys to actually express themselves, whether it's in a middle practice, in nets, just making sure they've got opportunity to actually play the game and not just sitting around not being involved. And I think that we try and make sure we've got enough fixtures. It is a bit of a challenge being in the Eastern Cape, and so we do travel a lot. So I think that is the key, that we've got to make sure there are fixtures for the boys, and also that those fixtures aren't being dominated necessarily by 2 or 3 players. Which can happen, especially in the junior level, So if there's less fixtures and guys are dominating the games, then there are going to be some guys sitting around doing not much on the field. So the more fixtures and more you sort of change the roles up a bit and get boys to experience different roles in different times of the game, then they're going to, the bug will bite. They'll get an opportunity to actually bring their skills to the game. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Just out of interest, just say, for example, you playing a Cape Town school, let's just say Sax, and you obviously got your first team playing on a Saturday. Do you leave on the Friday, or do you leave early bells fly in on Saturday morning? How does it work? And then do you leave Sunday morning? It must be quite a busy weekend for you.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of those traveling fixtures, at the moment, they would all be in a festival environment.
Right.
So obviously we would, just like you were involved in festivals in Natal, we'd always be going, a day before and the day afterwards. So at the least, maybe 2 games played at a time if you travel. So, we've been up to Grey Bloem once where we've played, maybe Friday afternoon and Saturday. But yeah, it's with the time constraints, there's pretty much, you got to travel the day before, play, travel back
Yeah.
the day afterwards. So it's just one of those things. Yeah.
It's
And
busy.
I think the boys do adapt as long as they've seen it before.
Mm.
If they've seen it at an under 14 age group before, by the time they get to open age group, they're used to it. They know what's coming. It's obviously just that getting them into it as a junior. And yeah, it's probably I think that the changing of formats is probably more trickier than the traveling. So in other words, if you changing for boys, switching from a 2020 game to a time game,
Yes.
that might be difficult for them to adjust to, but it's also a good lesson. It's not the end of the world. It's a good way for them to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Carl, going back again to the number of players that you have at your exposure, is it part and parcel of you going to be utterly focused on your attention to details of honing in on the skills of those learners? So, like again, your numbers are so much to deal with. It's part of your job, so to say, right, we've got to maximize what we have here to get the most out of the learners. Is that what contributes to a successful program?
Yeah, I think that, with the cricketers, you've got to make sure that, as I said earlier, that they're getting some sort of reward straight away. So you don't want to be putting a guy's skills in the wrong role.
Yes.
So maybe find his strength straight up, okay, and make sure you plug him into a role that even his first couple of games, he starts to identify with that role and actually feels like he's contributing. So you get that little bit of success and a bit of confidence in him, and then obviously you're going to keep growing his skills. But I think that initial placement and finding people in the right and setting that sense of responsibility in that role, and then they sort of take charge, they get accountability for it, and they get self-belief, and then you add the more and more skills as you go along. So that initial introduction into the sport, obviously as a junior, and as they grow up, if you've got a makeup of 13 players, in the back of your mind, you're always trying to work out how can I get the best out of this player, and where does that role suit him to start off with. And then he gets that momentum, and then you can add the more and more skills to his game as you grow on. Yeah.
Because I think one skill that you've got as a coach is you've always got the ability that you can win this game. It doesn't matter if the odds are stacked against you, sorry. You can win this game. And I remember it was Michaelmas week, and you were actually playing at St. Charles. And I think it was against like a St. John's, Joburg or something. It was a tough school. But you went in, it was a hot day. I think you fielded first. I can't quite remember, something like that. But the opposition scored a good score. You chased it down and you won the game. But it was what amazed me, Cole, is your mindset. Like, it doesn't matter who we're playing against. We're just going to get these little things right, and we're going to win the game. Is that what do you consider one of your strengths as a coach? You're positive, you're going to make the most of the situation, and you guys can get a result here. It doesn't matter who you're playing against.
Yeah, I think, the more that you interview ex-pros and players, and they always ask, what was the biggest influence on your game? How did you start your career? And a lot of the players always respond with, at some stage it was a net or a middle or an experience with a coach where a coach actually believed in them. There was this utter belief that you can do this, and not necessarily, having a loaded question, just, there's a role, and I believe that you can fulfill this role. And just asking a couple of questions of players as to, where they fit in, and just selling that confidence and belief. So I think when I'm on the side of the field, I genuinely believe that the players can do it.
Yes.
And I think that's what the players need to see, because they don't want to look up and see something that there's no belief there, So, and the more you grow that culture, and the more that, the senior players stem in behind that, then, yeah, funny enough, things do sometimes work out for you.
No,
not always. But yeah, that's I think it's just that underlying belief that they can do it. Yeah.
Well, culture is key, like you said, and I think you've developed a great one there. You really, really have. But Carl, I just want to touch on your career briefly. And you're very disciplined as a player, from what I can pick up. Everything was kept on the ground. Because, you hit about, 725 fours. And not as many sixes.
Don't research.
Would you classify yourself as a worker of the ball, played into space, kept your cool, trying to manipulate the ball as well as you could?
Yeah, I think that was, I mean, in hindsight, you know, when we started out, sure, in the sort of late 90s and that sort of thing, even early 90s, you know, there wasn't international cricket. So it was all around sort of Castle Curry Cup. And, you know, so our test cricket was provincial cricket. And before we came to the 92 World Cup, the Curry Cup was you know, it was a massive competition. It still is, but we didn't have that test cricket. So the way players were brought up was, you know, was about occupying the crease and sort of batting for long periods and all the rest. And so I think maybe, I mean, my way into provincial cricket needed that method. So, you know, when we were starting out at Eastern Province Cricket, there was quite a formidable batting lineup.
Yes.
So my way into the team was not necessarily going to be a middle order batter at that stage. It was always going to be trying to sneak in up the order where there was a hole. So, yeah, and I think, you know, my coach at that stage was Colin Bland. And obviously Kepler was involved, Kepler Wessels at that stage. So that was the role they wanted me to play. So like I was saying early on, you know, if someone, you know, if that's your way in, then you're going to go for it.
Yes.
But then on another aspect that, you know, I went to the National Academy for a couple of months or 6 months, and Hilton Ackerman was the coach. And there was a period there where he actually then sold a different role to me. He wanted to, obviously, me to express myself, and they sort of used me up front just to smash it. And there were some days where it came off, and there were some days it wasn't. So to answer your question, I think innately sort of my approach is to wear down a bowler. But in hindsight, you know, the Hilton Ackerman trying to get me to express myself a bit more, I wish that I had found that balance a bit more between being, and I think that, I mean, obviously the era of 2020 cricket started much later, and I had only a brief taste of it. But I would have liked to have had the opportunity to develop that skill, especially at 2020 cricket up front, where the ball does swing around, but the wickets are true. So
yes,
it would have been So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
No, definitely. 2020 cricket, that's always an interesting conversation because we've been chatting about the RPL and all of that. Do you think there's space for it at school level in terms of like a nice 2020 league, gets the guys more excited about the game? Do you guys partake in one at all?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think the as I said earlier, the right balance. I think the boys have to be exposed to it. You know, the strike rotation as a batter and learning to bowl at the death as a bowler is such an important skill. And 2020 cricket asks that of you all the time. So I definitely think that there's a space for it. And you know that sort of there's the requirement of 2020 cricket says you need to think on your feet and need to make a decision quickly, and it's another good skill. So we definitely, wherever we can fit it in, we do it. And we obviously at festivals and that there is 2020 cricket, and so we don't shy away from it. So no, absolutely, I think there's definitely a learning in it for the boys, definitely.
And I think that's critical because, you know, as nicely as I can put this, some coaches would want to play 2020 cricket just to get the game out the way. Yet, like you're saying, there's so much to learn from cricket about this actual format. And I hope that learning takes place, not just, you know, the game's done in and out, let's just keep going. That's the wrong approach.
100%.
Like you said, the children pick up on it. The kids pick up on that. That, we're just getting in and out here, so what's fun about cricket? So you've said something very interesting there. They got to learn from it.
Those skills are transferable. I mean, if you've got a guy that gets stuck in the 60s in a time game because he can't get off strike, and he gets out playing a rash shot and he loses out the opportunity of getting 100. Now that period where he's on 60, learning to rotate the strike can be learnt in 2020 cricket. So now he gains that skill because he has to do it in 2020 cricket. Next time he gets on 60 in a time game and gets knocked down or buckled down, he can rotate strike. So 100%, yeah.
Interesting. going to go back to your career briefly. And you spent a lot of your time with Eastern Province and the Warriors. Was it a place where you felt, that's where the most I got out of my career? And so I'm going to be loyal to these guys and play as much as I can for them because they really brought the best out of your career.
Yeah, I think, obviously in terms of community, I was born in the Eastern Cape, so I went to the school in the Eastern Cape. So yeah, I think there was very seldom moments where I looked like, I wanted to play elsewhere. Just, that was my place, and, I wanted to give back. But in terms of batting, I think that the actual skill of batting, I think, locally is quite tough because of the wickets are slow. So whether that suited me, I'm not sure. Pace onto the ball and playing up north, I enjoyed playing at places like Free State. I enjoyed places, maybe not sure why, but KZN's wicket. I mean, it seemed to be a lot quicker than St. George's. So where the ball was coming on, it could have been better for me as a batsman. But I think that sense of belonging and that sense of community and obviously playing for your province, it doesn't leave easily. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Cole, you touched on that you went to the cricket academy, the South African academy, and you played a few games, for the SA Invitational 11. That idea, do you think is it a good thing? Is it still growing in the country? And would it always be necessary for warm-up games? Or this is probably a random question. Does it toy with players' emotions in the sense that here I am, I'm in the SA Academy, Invitational 11, but then what's the progress from there? Unless you really get called up to the Proteas, is it a tough question to ask? Is there a place for the Invitational 11?
No, I think there definitely is. It's like even in schoolboy cricket. This time of the year, you've got a few grade 12s playing still. But you'll find that odd opportunity just to blood an under 15 player and that sort of thing. So it's not necessarily to see how he performs. It's just to get him comfortable with the situation. So I think even in the games you're talking about now, it's not so much that this is your game, you need to make 100 so you can play for South Africa next week. It's about you've played for one team for so long. Now you need to go and now meet a new group of players, maybe a different role, and it's not as comfortable. So it's about almost creating those little moments of, a step up, yes, and then finding your feet in that environment, and then you'll get another one. And eventually, it's not always immediate that a player just jumps to that. You might need 2 or 3 invitation games, before you start to see that sense of, okay, I can play at this level. So I think there's definitely a need in terms of transitioning players through the pipeline, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been quite strongly opinionated about South African A side that they should be playing more games.
Yes.
That's just my opinion. I really feel that as a country they need to be playing more games, not once a year. I think that's crazy.
Also the players you play against, if you play against some international teams who are warming up for a series, I remember all those games we played, the West Indies or Sri Lanka or England or something. At the end, it was the end of one season. A team was picked and we played England A at Newlands. There was Flintoff in there was Harmison, and you never forget those games. So, it's always that warm-up game for a test team, I think there's definitely a need for it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's always, I know it's not like, I'll say this respectfully, not almost the same as playing for the Proteas, but you just got to keep persisting because you're there, you're playing for SA, just keep going. And that's a nice, like a carrot, just keep going. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. No, it almost needs to, it might be reinvented, but it needs to be, the integrity and the stature of it needs to be held. You can't lose the stature of those games. Yeah.
Absolutely. But going back to your Jumbos days, did you enjoy the competitiveness? And there was no room or lack of intensity during those Currie Cup games. Those games were tough, weren't they, Cole?
No, absolutely. They were just awesome. Again, the Eastern Province, the Jumbos, it's again that sort of pipeline and that sort of line of heritage that you got to look after, and that competition. Yeah, and also we had guys like, overseas pros like Eldin Baptiste around, and it was just, I mean, Dave Callahan was there, and obviously Mark Rushmere, and there was just, a line of cricketers, and you had this sense of duty just to uphold the competition, and it was just awesome cricket. There was always a battle out there, and we all loved it. Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I believe our local cricket's going to be starting soon. 2nd of November, I believe, is the first 4-day franchise.
All right. Okay.
It's really good to see some cricket happening. Very, very good.
Yeah. No, we need it. We need it.
Unfortunately, shrouded in some negative stuff, but let's not dwell on that too much. Let's be grateful for it's happening. So it's
100%. 100%.
Cole, you were also given some leadership during your career, and that's something that you also brought into the cricket's setup at St Andrews, in the sense that you want the guys to take leadership roles. So if I'm opening the bowling, I'm opening the batting, I'm the keeper, though you've got your captain for each side, you also want the players to take responsibility. Is that also a critical part of your planning?
Yeah, I think that's the only way that learning, takes place. I think, with the recent courses and exposure that we've had, is that, leadership it can't be all top down, So nowadays kids have the opportunity to gain so much knowledge on their own. I mean, it's all at our fingertips with the internet and cell phones and all the rest. So if you keep spoon feeding and keep giving the plans and the strategies, well, that's what they're going to keep relying on. So I think that as soon as you give the players enough space to actually take ownership of their own learning, they learn a lot quicker, and I think it goes in a lot deeper. So it's all about making sure that they are doing some reflection and planning before they practice and they play their matches. So initially you might, as a coach, feel a bit frustrated, but after 3 or 4 weeks, the guys start coming to you with their plans, and because it's theirs, they take ownership of it and they actually value it. Whereas if it's the coach's plan all the time, it's you doing all the nagging, I say, So that's the way the model's changed a bit, and that's the way leadership, if the guys are leading themselves, it's much easier.
Absolutely. But Carl, I know this might be a hard one to answer, but I'm sure there's 1 or 2 fixtures that you love coming up against and looking forward to on the Saturday. Is there any school that you really enjoy playing against, or you just take each fixture as it comes?
Yeah, I think local rivalries are always good. So obviously playing all the schools in Grahamstown and Kingswood and Graham College, and obviously our rivals Grey and P. So I think it just brings out, it tests us the most, and it just also can bring out the best in us and also sometimes the worst in us. So I think it's just a good challenge, So, and always like to play the Natal schools, Michael House, Hilton and Kersney and all those schools, and the Joburg schools. And so, they're obviously the local rivalries, but all those other schools are quality schools. So it's just all great competition. We have such a good school system in terms of sport. I mean, in this country, it's just unbelievable. So there's always fixtures and opportunities.
Yeah, because that leads to my next question. Is school sport, particularly cricket, is it in good hands, or is there still a bit of work to do?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously got to know a lot of the coaches around the school, environment, and the guys are quality masters and quality coaches, So I think our school system and the fixtures don't stop. The festivals don't stop. So things are always happening at school level. So, I don't think, obviously they'll keep looking at it and keep refreshing it. But I think there's definitely enough talent within the country that leaves school. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. We don't seem to. Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Michaelmas week didn't happen. Were you quite keen on that week? How was your first side looking? Because you would have perhaps taken a few youngsters to the festival this year?
Yeah, we had a good first term, and there were some players that, even just as matrics, had started to blossom a bit later on in their career. So we would have been at Zimbabwe before Michaelmas Creek. We
Right.
go there in the September holiday. So yeah, I mean, guys were obviously very disappointed. But I think, yeah, they were always hanging on that maybe things might change. But obviously through a rugby season without playing one match, I think the boys sort of started to accept things that, you know, weren't going to be so a bit disappointing. But yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have
well,
to get.
I'm sure you're raring to go next year, Carl. I'm sure you've got lots of plans in place. You're going to be meticulous.
Yeah, as soon as we can get back on that road, absolutely, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, Carl, that's all I really have to ask you today. It's been really nice to chat to you. I know cricket's in good hands because you're the man at the helm there. And like I said, I really enjoy watching your brand of cricket. I really enjoy how your teams go about playing cricket. Always up for a challenge, and I think that's excellent. It's going to go a long way, very long way. Teaches them about life, like you said, so it's good.
100%. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah, and good luck with your page.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Jan, thank you. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, so thank you. Much appreciated, Carl.
All the best in Cape Town.
Have a good one. And when you're here, let me know. If you're playing cricket here next year, please let me know. I'd like to catch up.
100%. Good.
Go well,
all the best, everyone.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, eh?
Bye-bye.
Bye.